Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we're jumping into another exciting beer that I got over Christmas up at the Sierra Nevada River bottle shop at their brewery there. And this is a style that I've only had one or two, maybe from Sierra Nevada out of all the years I've been drinking their beer. And this is actually a beer brewed in collaboration with Russian River Brewing Company. So Sierra Nevada and Russian River, though they did handle the actual brewing and the bottling of it at their Chico, California facility, their main headquarters. So this is called Brux, 7th year release. It was created in 2012. It is a wild ale, got Brettanomyces doing its thing, and again, collaboration between Sierra Nevada and Russian River. They could call this an Imperial if they wanted. They did not, but this has quite the high ABV for a sour at 8.6% ABV. So you don't see that often. I'm expecting this to be a big beer. So in terms of label art on this one, it's got a stopwatch in a hand, and it just very relatively clean, normal, nothing funky design. Just has the name of the beer, and then on the back they tell you a little bit about the collaboration. So two powerhouse breweries. I'm expecting this to be a pretty special beer here. Got a nice corked cage, so we do have our little towel here to give us a little bit better grip. I'm going to slide that glass over to the side real quick. Just give this a little twist. Oh, yep, no problem coming off of there whatsoever. That came off beautifully. Oh yeah, you can smell that Brett funk on that cork. It smells really quite nice. And indeed, even coming out of the bottle, very, very pronounced sours and Brettanomyces. So let's get this poured. This is a glass that came with my Prairie Artisan Ales Stout Sampler pack, but because it is a flute design and my Delirium Tremens glass I normally use for sours is currently dirty, I figured I would use this one since it is a flute as well. So this ought to work well for this nice sour. Let's hold this up visually. Oh yeah, that's beautiful. That's a classic wild ale color. Typically, they're going to be brewed using lighter malt than what you would find in other beer styles. I mean, of course, you can have any color of the rainbow, but they're typically going to be this paler golden yellow color. And that's indeed exactly what this looks like. This is maybe just a touch darker than your average Pilsner, but on maybe about the same color spectrum as you'd find in your average session IPA. It's that true, bright, golden yellow color. I know on the camera it probably doesn't look as bright as that, but I can see the light really hitting this. Yeah, it's a very nice, bright yellow. Looks fantastic. It's also quite active in terms of carbonation, as you would expect for a sour. It's got those tinier, finer beads that are rushing up, and some kind of medium, small. Nothing too large in terms of overall carbonation. You know, a little bit of cling to the sides, but no big, you know, 2-inch thick sour head foam to get through. So let's get a proper sniff. Yeah. Wow, that smells fantastic. Okay, so this is one of those that has that aroma that I just love when I discover it in a sour. They don't all have it, but it's what I describe as kind of a tutti frutti aroma, or kind of like juicy fruit gum, or like a tutti frutti flavored jelly bean. It's that aroma and that flavor, and that is coming straight from the Brettanomyces. That's one of the things it does. Brettanomyces is a very interesting microorganism. It can impart a ton of different aroma and flavor compounds, but this is one that it's known for. It can also present, you know, kind of barnyard notes. Some people call funk notes. Some people could even say like a gym or gym towels, gym socks. It just depends on how the beer comes together. This is a natural, of course, organism, so you never know what you're going to get. But on this one, it smells very distinctly of that tutti frutti kind of layering that Brettanomyces can so often bring to the table. Underneath it, you can smell a little bit of the souring, a little bit of the tart, but it's not astringent on the nose. It really just smells very tutti frutti forward. Yeah, I mean, just smells fantastic, almost candy-like in the way that it smells. So without further ado, we're going to jump right in and see what this one's about. Ooh, yeah. That's nice. So this has quite an interesting flavor profile that I really didn't expect. It's got a lot of different layers to it, and this is really big for a wild ale. All right, so the first thing that I noticed was there's subtle currents of that kind of tutti fruity. You get a little bit of that in the flavor profile, but it's much more dominant as an aroma than it is a flavor. Indeed, that's kind of very much in the background on the palate of the flavor that really jumps forward at you. What I got immediately behind that was an underlying funkiness, not over the top, but that's kind of the dominant flavor coming out of the Brettanomyces is funk in the profile of this glass. What I did not expect whatsoever is the other underlying flavor that's dominant, and it's really that kind of funk paired with this, is this has a flavor of almost like a Hefeweizen, like a German Hefeweizen, maybe a Franziskaner or something like that, where you get this slight kind of clovey, kind of tropical banana kind of underpinning. You can get some of those notes mildly in Brettanomyces beers on occasion, but it's quite pronounced in this. So it almost makes it feel like a hybrid of a couple different styles. Like if you were to take a German Hefeweizen and then pair it with an American wild ale, that's almost really what I'm getting in this flavor profile. And it's a very, very pleasant treat. This is a really big beer, guys, and it's very, very nice. This is crisp, it is refreshing. And yes, this is a wild ale, it is a sour, but the sour and the tart is not astringent. It's just a little bit up front. This is much more dominated by the characteristics and subtleties of the flavor and aroma profile that it's bringing to the table, and much less of the sour and tart. There's a little bit, but it's there, and it almost immediately dials back and just opens up to all these complex layers that just keep moving in and out of each other. Really, really nice beer. The other thing I can say, I'll go ahead and tell you about it. The finish on this is not like your average sour. And I did kind of expect that as soon as I realized that it really wasn't pungently sour or tart. That kind of sensation is what's going to have the most pronounced drying effect on the palate on the end of the sip. This is not dry at all. It's actually very wet and very crisp to the end. And I don't mean crisp in the sense that it truncates or that it goes dry. I just mean the way that it tapers off and it just kind of poof and it's gone. It's very, very nice, guys. This is a big beer. It's a complex beer. Not what I expected, but what I'm getting, I'm really, really happy with. So we're going to jump back in for a second sip. I'm going to pick apart this flavor profile again. There was a lot happening, a lot for my brain and expectations to process. So we'll jump in for take two. We'll talk about this body and this mouthfeel, and then we'll talk about the balance, but very, very nice beer. Take two. Yeah, this is big. Wow. Really is like wild ale meets Hefeweizen, and in the best way possible. So the body and the mouthfeel on this, granted, this is 8.6% ABV, so it really shouldn't be that big of a surprise. It's much more robust than you would find in your typical wild ale. I would say this is almost, it's a very strong medium body. I don't want to say it's medium heavy because it's not heavy, but it's got presence and weight that you do not find in a sour. I mean, it's extremely rare. This is uncommonly weighty. It's got an uncommon presence to it on the palate, and certainly as you're swallowing. In terms of the mouthfeel, same story here. You can really feel the resistance on this one that is not the norm, but again, this ABV is not the norm either. And this one in particular really foams up when you agitate around the palate. It really does open up and fill the entire oral cavity. And yeah, just expect it. So no big sips if you're going to aerate around the palate to let everything coat, or you're going to run out of space. But yeah, very, very nice. So texture-wise and weight-wise, much bigger. I mean, this is an outlier, but again, so is this ABV. But it's absolutely fantastic. I think that it matches this ABV for this beer style. I wouldn't have expected it, but it's fantastic. In terms of the balance, you know, there's not much to talk about per se in the balance in this beer, because it is what it is. It's the malt bill plus whatever amount of hops that they used, plus, you know, kind of the Brettanomyces doing its thing. So in terms of the overall scope of how you would balance a beer like that, it's really more an aspect of the balance of the various malts and grains that they used, what hops they did use and what volumes. And from that perspective, it doesn't really apply that much to a beer like this, but what I'm getting, I'm really, really liking. The underpinning of this malt bill is very much a classic, lighter, crisper underpinning, such as you would find typically in a wild ale. This just happens to be, you know, double the average ABV. So it's very well balanced in that respect. The Brettanomyces, it's doing its thing. The yeast other that they may have added in here, if there's wild on top of the Brettanomyces, is doing its thing. I would almost assume that maybe there could be some other strains along with Brett that are bringing in some of these other underlying forward nature of this kind of clove and banana. Yes, you can get that in Brettanomyces, but it's not normally this dominant on the profile. Then again, this was, you know, put together in 2012. We're now in 2022. So, you know, maybe it's just settled out and, you know, emphasized specific points. But whatever they did to it, I like the balance of it. This is just a well put together beer. I kind of expected it would be. You get two big powerhouse brewers such as Sierra Nevada and Russian River together, and they collaborate on a special limited release wild ale. I had a suspicion that this was going to be a very good brew, very worth picking up, and I'm certainly glad that I did. I'm going to take my time, sip on this one, come up with my scores. When we come back, we'll get this beer ranked from top to bottom. All right, now that we've gotten to enjoy this beer, we're going to get it ranked. This was a collaboration between Sierra Nevada Brewing Company and Russian River Brewing Company. And this is one of a limited release that they've done several of. This was called Brux, 7-year release because they have it named for the different years. This one produced in 2012. It was a wild ale, and this one clocked in at 8.6% ABV. So this was just a great beer. When I saw this in their Mills River bottle shop, I knew I had to grab it. I've never seen this anywhere. I've only had one or two other sours ever by Sierra Nevada, and then when I looked and saw it was a collab with Russian River, I mean, that was just a must-buy then and there. And this beer had a lot of surprises I did not expect, but one thing was certain, it did not let me down. So things I didn't anticipate, but the overall thought that I had about the beer, absolutely right on the money. So I don't need to go through every category here. There was only one category where it did not get a perfect score. And, you know, I'm really just basing this on what the brewer said that they were trying to make out of it. And this is maybe being a little bit nitpicky, but I'll go into detail. And indeed, I did talk about it while I was first sipping on this beer. And that category is the finish. So I did mention that the finish on this was nice and crisp, but this as a sour was not particularly dry. They did state, the brewers, that this was supposed to be a wild ale, kind of in the style of a Belgian dry. This really didn't present itself as a dry or brut sour. Indeed, I've had many over the years, and this wasn't really dry. It felt very wet and very round to the end. Now, maybe it's just because of the age of it, where it is in the process, how it's kind of settled down and mellowed over time, especially with the intensity of sour and tart, dialing back to very minimal perception. Maybe that's part of it. Yeah, this really didn't have a particularly dry finish, even though they did state that they were modeling it on a Belgian dry. So yeah, I still said overall the finish was above average. It was a slight deviation from the norm regardless of their target, but I did still have to dock some points here. So finish, it did get a 7 out of 10, which is still well above average. And that does, of course, bring the total score on Sierra Nevada, collab with Russian Rivers, Brux 7-year release, to a 97 out of 100. So guys, yeah, I mean, like I said, being really nitpicky, but you know, I have to take based on what they were targeting and what I experienced. It was a slight deviation. Otherwise, it would have swept it, and we would have had yet another perfect score, so close to so many really great beers I've had as of late. Look, if you can find this somewhere, or any of their other releases or iterations of this beer, and you're a sour fan, or just really like the intricacies of Brettanomyces beers anyway, this is absolutely worth your time to seek. I've never seen this anywhere other than the bottle shop in Mills River. I'm sure that they probably have some in Chico, California as well. Maybe there's limited releases they let out to specific distributors or craft shops, but definitely worth your time if you can find this. I knew I was going to grab it. I've never seen it, and I am really, really glad I did. This was yet another fantastic beer. Sierra Nevada doesn't let me down. They're one of my favorites, and this one is a must grab. If you see it, grab it. I don't know how limited release this is, but it's definitely worth grabbing because I doubt you're going to see it again. Folks, that's today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to stay in the loop when our videos go live, just turn on your notifications, hit that bell icon. It's right next to the subscribe button. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.